Hey y'all, welcome to Maker Industries. My name's Gary. I'm kicking things off right now. New channel. I wanted to start by getting a shop tour going. A place that I've been building out for I'd say 12 to 18 months or so to get this thing really, at least to the beginning, workable place that I wanted it to be, hit at all the areas that I was after. Start of this company was really driven by multiple angles and multiple drivers behind it, from learning new skills, which was one of the early on pieces. I have a 6-year-old son. I want to be able to pass on skill sets to him that I already have, plus what I'll learn, some of the stuff him and I are going to learn together, but have things that he can move through life and carry on and take through and do whatever he wants to do with them. Right. I wouldn't force it onto him, but just something that he would be able to have that in his backpack per se, and use it as needed. And then just other angles that it led to with me trying to learn something new, constantly be moving forward. I'm not the type to typically just sit still and stay static and be like, hey, this is the capacity of what I know, and then that's it. I'm always trying to push the envelope and learn something new and try things new. So that was my intent of initially starting things out. A couple of projects I think led me into where I wanted to be with this. I was I have a Jeep, and I was going to do a lift on it, and one of the components was going to require welding to be done. And as I looked at, um, you know, I can't weld. Okay, well, how many times have I walked through saying, I wish I could, like, I wish I could weld, or I wish I could do this, or I wish I knew how to do that. And I finally just said, you know what, rather than paying a shop to do the work on this thing, I'm going to go a different route and do something. I'll do a kit that doesn't require welding. And then I'm going to take the money I would have spent on labor, and I'm going to go buy myself a welder, and I'm going to teach myself to weld. So that was also one of my early on pieces where I was just like, the time is now that I got to get past the I wish I could, and start to get into a point where I can say, like, hey, if anything, I'm learning, or I'm applying a skill that I already knew. There was another piece where somebody I knew was getting a house remodel, and some of the work wasn't quite up to what my expected outcomes would be if you're paying somebody to do a job. And I just started to realize that, nobody's going to be pickier at doing a job than you yourself, right? Depending upon what your outcome is. Doesn't mean everything we do is going to be, top caliber, right? Sometimes it's just not needed. There's just certain things where we're like, hey, what I've just done with this is totally adequate. Like, I needed a spacer with a piece of wood. I do not need to have this to a precision within thousands of 90 degrees. I just need a spacer. And so therefore, just a cut piece of wood is completely fine. Right. So that was the other piece that I was looking at, was how do I get things to where I wanted them to be? And that started me down this road of building out my shop space and looking at, the overall maker space. I can't stay dedicated to one specific kind of task. There's a lot of people out there, tremendous woodworkers or tremendous metal workers. That will always be tremendous metal and woodworkers, far beyond anything I could ever do. But I do like to work with wood, and I do like to work with metal, and I do want to have the ability to do to whatever it is that I'm working on, do those basic functions and get myself there. So I wanted to have a lot crammed into here, which leads into what this tour video is about, which is how do I take this 2-car garage and be able to add in all these kind of different stations, shall I say, where I've got, my regular hand tools for, say, mechanic work, or if I'm doing metalworking, I've got my lathe, and behind me I've got my mill, or if I'm doing woodworking, I've got a section over there. If I'm doing welding, I've got that. And so I think you'll see throughout here that I've got a lot crammed into a pretty small space. And give an idea of like what my mindset is in building out a shop like this, which isn't for everybody. I think, I always think that, like, hey, if you like working on things, who wouldn't want a 10,000 square foot shop, with the biggest table saw you could possibly get, and the biggest, CNC, mill and or a CNC router or all the big equipment where you can literally just about do anything at the push of a button. I mean, yeah, that sounds gratifying and it sounds glorious, but it's also not reasonable, right? And it definitely wasn't reasonable here. So my mindset was how can I get as much into here as I possibly can and make this a lot of the area is multifunctional. Some are a little bit better than that. And then also the tooling. How do I end up with tooling? Most things when it comes to buying stuff, I am not I need this tool. Let me go and either order it online brand new or go to a store and go buy it. That's my first line of attack for decades has always been, what's the used market going to look like, right? There's somebody out there that bought this same tool I'm looking for that tucked it away in their garage and literally almost never used it. And had super light duty use. And that's usually what I'm after, is trying to find those used deals, let somebody else take the hit on the cost paying retail, and let me come in behind them and buy it up. So most of the stuff that I built out in here is used. I mean, there's a handful of things that are new. But I also looked at, like, if I'm buying new, I'm not, unless there was like a part or a company that never put stuff on sale, I'm buying this stuff only when it's on sale. There's no way I'm going to pay the full retail price on it. Sorry, companies, but that's my thing, is how could I look at the used market, B, the on sale market as a way to get this stuff into the garage and into the shop space, and really at being able to be used within a, kind of within ever that budget is that you're setting. So that was it. And then as I had hit on about being kind of like multifunctional, not everything can do more than one thing, right? There are certain tools that are kind of a one trick pony. You can only use it kind of one way for one thing. And I get that, but as much as I possibly could, I tried to look at ways that if I buy something, could it be used in more than just one operation? Can't always, right? So I'm going to have certain things you're going to be like, oh, but that can only be used for just that. Totally true. I get that, right? But a lot of the other stuff is I can use it in other areas of the shop, and I can use it in multiple operations or various different tasks, and maybe I'm using it in a less than traditional sense, but it allows me to be able to use that. So that was the other thing I tried to look at when building out shop space, building out which tools I was going to use. Is this an efficient production facility? No way in hell, right? Again, 10,000 square foot shop where you have a table saw that's literally set to do one operation and just rip through, kind of a sequence of cuts that are identical to one another, and you're rocking out 100 of those. I could set up to do that, but it's also going to have to tear down, and I can't leave it set up. I can't, sure, I could get through today, tomorrow, the next day, but at some point in time, that's going to have to break down. So the efficiency isn't totally there, but I tried to set it up as efficient as I could given the use case that I'm in. The other thing is everything's super modular in here, with the exception of the lathe, which will actually change, and I'll get this up onto a wheeled stance. I saw something recently on I'm trying to think somebody made a workbench, an awesome woodworking bench. Padilla, I think it was Padilla or something along those lines. Down in Australia, did this fantastic maple woodworking bench where they use these motorcycle lifts underneath as a way to lift up this like 600-pound bench. Awesome idea. So I'll probably steal that idea, so that when needed, this can quickly move whatever I need and then drop back down. But just about everything else in here besides that, and my mill and like air compressor tucked over here in the corner, everything is essentially mobile on wheels and relatively easy to move. And even the lathe, if I needed to move it, I could nudge it out of the way. All the other stuff is essentially on wheels, so that I can reconfigure as needed given the job that I'm doing, or if I needed to, for example, pull a car in for some reason, I could tuck everything up out of the way. Or if I walked out here and I was just bored one day and said, I need a new shop layout, I could completely do that within minutes. Probably 59 minutes or less to reconfigure because of the fact everything is on wheels. And one of the more recent times when I did a little bit of a reconfiguration, I kind of came out here with this expectancy I was going to spend half a day, and I think I was done in like 40 minutes, and I moved a tremendous amount of stuff around just because it was all on wheels and it was easy. It was easy to do. So that's kind of my mindset on shop, and I'll take you through kind of the different areas of what I have and my mindset behind it. Also, a bit about why I wanted to start Maker Industries, and we'll see. We're going to see where this ends up going. Not, it's not meant to be like a how to do things. I'm a believer that there's many ways to get to a kind of a final state, and we're all going to have different approaches to it. And I always say there's probably there's a bigger list of things that we shouldn't do, right? Or wrong ways of doing things. Like, hey, don't rip a piece of plywood with your hand directly over it where the blade's going to catch it. Like, we know that's on a list of what not to do, but the list of like how to do things, that's constantly evolving, right? People are coming up with new techniques and new ways, and then technology and the betterment of some of the tooling that's out there is also allowing for us to change the way we approach things or do things on that. So that's my segue into this. We're going to do a shop walkthrough. It's a 2-car garage. It can only take so long to get us through this, but we'll go through kind of each of those sections, and I'll talk through and give a little bit of my input of why I set it up a certain way and how I see its use, and go from there.